You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me on socials at SamLittle44 and the podcast at Maple Footy Pod. And now there's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, and welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. You already know what we are because we do play it in the intro. We're the unofficial football podcast of the North. And today, of course, we're doing our weekly recap on Canadian soccer, what's happened over this past weekend. Of course, CanChamp was going on, then big results in the MLS, big results abroad too. So very much looking forward to getting into all of that. And as of right now, the interview has not been recorded as I'm recording this, but if all goes to plan, I will have an interview with a pretty big player dropping on Friday. So stick around to the end of the episode to see a little snippet of that if it ends up happening today. If not, we will act like I never said this and we won't mention it and we will move on with our days and it never happened. But regardless, let's get into this one because some of the biggest news this is the biggest news in Canada soccer right now. Alphonso Davies out for 5 weeks, hamstring injury, brutal. I feel so bad for Alphonso Davies, and I know he doesn't need my pity or anything, but this is such a huge blow for him specifically because he's had such a terrible time of injuries this last year. Ever since going out with that ACL injury back in March, it feels like anytime he's getting back to getting to play regularly, getting to be on the pitch as much as possible, he gets another setback with another injury, and the hamstrings have really been a bit of a niggling issue for him these last couple of months since coming back from the ACL injury. So it really is a shame. Of course, there's huge concern for Canada soccer as well, as Alphonso Davies is 1, our captain, and 2, our best player, and 3, our most important player. So it's obviously a concern for any Canadian soccer fan or anybody that is a fan that wants to see the best players at the biggest tournaments, because he is one of the best players in my humble opinion. Now, Alphonso Davies, it has not been confirmed if he will be or will not be at the World Cup. For me personally, this is my personal opinion. If Alphonso Davies can even give you 1%, you bring Alphonso Davies to this World Cup. The only world in which I don't bring Alphonso Davies to this World Cup is he can't go, period. He will not be able to go. That would be the only reason I wouldn't bring him. And even then, I'm probably still bringing him in the off chance that he can. Like, I know that's probably biased and it's probably like, what are you talking about? He just is that good. He's that important. I think you bring him. But outside of that, you just want him to be healthy. You want him to get past these injuries. As I said, feel for him because I can only imagine what he's feeling, what he's thinking. I do genuinely feel bad for him and just want him to be healthy because you want to see the best players playing at their best level. He's been coming back. Every time he's come back this season, he's looked like he hasn't missed a step. So the quality's still there. We just need to see him getting healthy, and it's a shame that it's been such a challenge, and it's brutal that it's happened now so close to the World Cup. As of posting this, it will be a month until Canada kicks off against Bosnia. That is not a lot of time to get healthy, and this is even outside of Davies, the other guys that are injured now. Like, it's not a lot of time to get healthy and to get fit, get up to snuff for that game against Bosnia. But really hoping for the best for Alphonso Davies. I just want to see him play, and he's one of those players that brings you just such joy when you watch. You just want to see him play. This absolutely sucks. I hated reading it on my phone, so I can only imagine what him, the medical staff, the Canada staff, players, everybody was thinking as well. So all the best to Alphonso Davies. We will back him every single step of the way because he's the best left back in the world, in my opinion. So we're going to back him every single step of the way and hoping to see him out at the World Cup and balling as only Alphonso Davies can. Elsewhere, though, some other news. This one I just found quite funny. Jesse Marsch called Roberto Zerbi, and not to be crude, not to be inappropriate, he called Roberto Zerbi, quote, an asshole. with how he dealt with the Ishmael Kone situation from last year. Of course, it's been well documented, the issues that Kone had with Marseille, especially with Roberto Zerbi. I'm sure we've all seen that clip of Roberto Zerbi just laying into Ishmael Kone in a training session for no good reason. And since then, he's been Maple Footy's number one op. So credit to Jesse Marsch. I mean, I'm not sure it's the most professional way to go about something, but credit to him sticking up for his players, sticking up for his boys. And yeah, I just thought it was quite funny and wanted to share it with you here on the podcast. Elsewhere as well, later today, at some point, Canada will be dropping their provisional 55-man squad for the World Cup. And then, of course, we will whittle that down to 26. But these are the 55 guys that could be representing us at the World Cup. So by the time you're watching this, the 55-man will probably already be up. But yeah, this is just if you're unfamiliar, these are the guys that we're going to whittle down from the 55 down to the 26. So if they're not in this 55, chances are they will not be going to this World Cup. You need to submit all the provisional squads and whatnot to FIFA and then go through the steps and then get to your final 26. But that is how that is looking. But outside of that, what do you say we get into some results, some performances, and all that fun stuff? So I felt it was appropriate to start off in CanChamp with this one because there were some big results, and of course it is Canada's competition. And since we're Canada's unofficial football podcast, it made sense to start the results-based stuff with these results. So firstly, over the weekend, FC Supra hosted Woodbridge Strikes of the OPL. And of course, in CanChamp, we do have semi-pro teams playing in the competition throughout the semi-pro leagues in Canada. So it's really cool that we get to see some of the potential future stars of the CPL or MLS or Canada Soccer that are playing in this competition. But it was Supra that were victorious over Woodbridge Strikes by a score of 3-1. And now, of course, you expect the CPL teams to win. That wasn't the case for all CPL teams this weekend, but Supra does win over Woodbridge, which is the expected result. But credit to Woodbridge. I thought they looked pretty good. I can't say I'm familiar with a ton of their players. I can't say I avidly watch the OPL, but I was very impressed by what I was seeing. I thought they were moving the ball really well. I thought that they didn't look out of place, which I think is the best comment that you can give to them. They didn't look out of place against FC Supra. FC Supra, of course, relying on stars like Chouanière and Sissoko to grab 2 of their 3 goals as well. So I think credit to Woodbridge. It's going to be exciting to see Supra go through this competition. I think they've been a very exciting and welcome inclusion into Canada Soccer. Given that this is their first year so far in the league, I think it's gone pretty well so far. Elsewhere, later in the weekend, Forge hosted Halifax, beating them by a score of 4-0. I think this is a really disappointing exit for Halifax because they were playing Forge, so not that Forge are an easy team, don't get me wrong, but I think that it's not like they were playing an MLS side where it's like, oh, that's a really tough one right out the gate. You're playing a fellow CPL side, a team that you have beaten in the past, and especially with a manager like Vanni Sartini, a guy that has won this competition on numerous occasions with the Vancouver Whitecaps. You kind of watch and you go, oh, maybe you could have... Maybe you could have won this one and gone through, but that was not the case. Weather delays be damned. Forge still got 4 goals in this one. And, I mean, it was a very good Forge performance. I don't think Halifax was bad up until they conceded the first goal. Once they conceded the first goal, it kind of just felt like it was over from there. There wasn't much fight after that, which I would say is disappointing if you're a Halifax fan. I think you'd want to see your team kind of be up for this one. But just not on the day. And I do still think that Vanni Sartini has done well so far with the Wanderers. But yeah, this is, I think, a disappointing exit given his credentials that he's bringing into this competition. But Forge, looking at them, very good performance as well. Tristan Borges grabbing himself 2 goals. The 1 goal was beautiful off the free kick. In around that same corner where he scored the famous Olympico in the 2023 final. I think we got to rename that spot of the field in honor of Tristan Borges, I think, because what a free kick, man. He is just so dangerous from set piece scenarios, dead ball scenarios. There we go. And he's just one of those players where it's like anytime that it is a dead ball situation, you feel like something could happen. And of course, in this occasion, it does. His second goal was also just a nice late run into the box that you'd expect from a player like Tristan Borges. Grabs that late run into the box. Simple finish for him. There you go. He grabs his brace. Brian Wright missed a penalty earlier in the game, but grabbed himself another goal. I think he's been in very good form to start this season and hoping that he can kind of continue on that trajectory. And then Antoine Baptiste grabbed the other goal for Forge as well. moving away from Forge and Halifax and moving into Pacific and Cavalry. A 3-1 win here for Cavalry. Dan Klomp acting as a center forward as he grabbed himself the first goal of the day, his first goal of the season as well. And yeah, I mean, it was just funny to see Dan Klomp making that late run into the box, grabbing the goal from in around the penalty area. Like, that's exactly what you expect from a number 9, not your center back. But hey, whatever works and however you get the goals. Cavalry, as I keep on saying, have been the most exciting team to watch so far this season, in my opinion, in the CPL. I just think back to front, they just feel like the most complete unit, and they've been just so much fun. It was always going to be tough for Pacific, but credit to Jimenez as he grabbed his Pacific debut, and despite, he conceded 3, this game would have been embarrassing had he not had himself the day that he did, because he had himself a very good game. And for a moment there, when Halifax drew level 1-1, you're kind of looking going, okay, if this result sticks, goalie's man of the match, because he's been great. But, of course, wasn't meant to be. Pacific conceded a penalty. Tobias Warshevsky, I mean, has he ever missed? He's missed one off the top of my head. He don't miss many, is my point. So it wasn't much doubt if he was going to dispatch this one. Then Cavalry grabbed the cherry on top in the dying embers of the game. But yeah, Cavalry through as well. The biggest shock of this weekend, Inter Toronto grabbed their first loss of the season to semi-pro side St. Laurent. 1-0. Now, if you're Inter Toronto, this is disappointing. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm not sure if they took opposition a bit too lightly. I'm not sure if St. Laurent just had a great game, and I think both are probably true statements. But if you're Inter Toronto, this is extremely disappointing. You started the season very, very well, and then to kind of go out in this manner, not ideal. But that is the magic of the Cup. You see this anywhere in the world. You've seen Premier League sides go out to 5th tier guys before, so it's not like it's an unheard of anomaly or anything. I just think if you're into Toronto, you're looking going, man, yeah, we didn't handle that one great. They didn't look bad, I don't think. They came up against a goalkeeper that was having himself a game. Cantona ended up being the man of the match, and yes, that is the nephew of Cantona. Eric Cantona. He is his nephew, so very funny that we have an Eric Cantona link in the semi-pro leagues of Canadian soccer. Small world, I guess, but very funny and very good performance nonetheless. But yeah, St. Laurent Chibon got the goal for them. It was a very well taken strike. Just basically grabs the ball from halfway, runs, and then caresses the ball into the bottom corner. And from there, St. Laurent saw it out. Inter Toronto just couldn't crack them. So what can you do? Magic of the Cup. You love to see results like this. I always love when there's a big upset. And St. Laurent, no stranger to these big upsets either. Just 2 years ago, they beat the Wanderers as well in the preliminary round of the Canadian Championship. So always really cool to see results like this. Then last result of the weekend, Vancouver FC hosted Langley United by a score 2-0. And Langley United, another team I thought they showed up, they showed out. I thought they looked pretty good. It just ended up being Vancouver FC found that little bit of extra quality. Marcello Polizzi grabs himself an assist. Shout out Maple Footy man. Marcello Polizzi grabs himself the assist as Tom Field, former Cavalry man, grabs himself a goal. Does the exact same celebration that Dan Klomp did. I thought that was very funny. Of course, 2 former teammates. Probably a nod to each other. Really cool. And then Mosquito grabbed himself the goal in the dying moments of the game to see this one off. But shout out a lot of the semi-pro teams here. I thought that they all looked really good, and none of them looked out of place in the games that they played. So really good to see that. Really good to see that they're in a good spot. And yeah, it does set up some pretty cool matchups for the next round, the quarterfinals here. So you have Vancouver Whitecaps taking on Cavalry. Then you have Montreal taking on Vancouver FC. You're going to have Forge taking on St. Laurent. And then you're going to have Atletico Ottawa taking on FC Supra. So those are going to be some really fun games to watch come July. So we will be covering those as they happen. But we will now move into some MLS results over the weekend. So taking a look, before we get into the MLS results, Champions Cup. Marcelo Flores and Tigres will be playing in the final, so we're going to be hoping that Tigres can get the win, so we have a Canadian boy winning the Champions Cup. That would be really cool, especially heading into a World Cup. Would be really nice to be walking in with a piece of silverware for Marcelo Flores. Elsewhere, though, in the MLS now properly, LAFC continue just a not great run of form at the moment. They started the season very, very well, but at the moment they found themselves in a bit of a rut. They lost 4-1 to Houston. Not a great few weeks for them. Have suffered a couple now iffy results in the MLS, to say the least, and of course went out in the Champions Cup semifinals. So not great. Stefan Eustáquio and Schaffelberg both grabbed the start. Schaffelberg grabbed himself an assist as well, so I am leaving here with something. Mathieu Choinière came in for Stefan Eustáquio in and around the 60th minute mark. Then, of course, Ryan Raposo came in the 43rd minute as one of the LAFC men went off injured. Raposo came on for him. But yeah, LAFC, I think they just got to get back on track. I don't think it's a question of quality. They have the quality on paper, one of the best teams in the MLS. We saw them be really, really good to start this season. So I don't think it's a question of quality. I just think maybe something's not jiving for them at the moment, for lack of a better term. But I do think that they will be able to turn this one around. Like I said, look at the quality that they have. I just would be hard pressed to go, yeah, it's not going to work for them. They're done, dude. Like, no, I think they'll be fine. I think it's just a couple brutal weeks for them, in all honesty. Elsewhere in the MLS, Joel Waterman goes the full 90 in a 3-1 loss to the Red Bulls. Jaquil Marshall-Rutty remained on the bench as an unused sub. So yeah, for Joel Waterman, I'm just glad that he's back playing. As has been well documented, our defenders have had their fair share of injuries this past year. And Joel Waterman, of course, spent a couple weeks on the sideline with a bit of a knock for Chicago. So it is just good that he's back in, going a full 90 leading up to this World Cup. So thankfully, he's back in. Result, of course, not great, but at least Joel Waterman was back in, went the whole 90. That is at least a positive. Elsewhere, Nikola Markovic comes in the 78th minute for DC United. As they were up 2-1, he was brought in to try to see out the result against one of the best teams in the league, Nashville. After DC had went down a man, they could not hold on to the win, but still leave with a draw, which I do still think is a pretty good result for DC, especially since they've had themselves a bit of an up and down start to the year, and Nashville has been a very consistent, very good side in the MLS this season. So really good to see Markovic being given those trusted moments, of course, just hot off of winning Player of the Month for DC United. So he is still, in my opinion, one to really watch for the future, one to really keep an eye on for Canada Soccer. I think that Jesse Marsch needs to integrate him into the squad at some point. I do fully understand not bringing him to the World Cup, as he has not been called up previously for Canada, so it would be a huge leap of belief for Jesse Marsch to then give Markovic the call. But if you earn it, you earn it, you know. But I would say after the World Cup, at least, we need to start seeing Markovic kind of get integrated into the Canada setup, because he is showing a lot of signs of promise. Elsewhere, another center back, Lucas McNaughton, helped sees St. Louis grab a 1-0 result over Kosi Thompson in the Colorado Rapids. Lucas McNaughton came in about the 75th minute, came in to help them see out the result, does his job, helps see out the result. I've always been a fan of Lucas McNaughton. I think he's been pretty good center back in the MLS. Of course, had a lot of success in the CPL as well. So it's been really good to see his career kind of move in the direction that it has. And St. Louis has been a team that's really struggled to string results together this season. So it's good to see them get this result against a pretty informed Colorado Rapids side. Elsewhere, goodness gracious, did Portland thrash Sporting Kansas City by a score of 6-0. And now looking at some of the Canadian boys on Kansas City, Stephen Afrifra got 15 minutes. Zorhan Bassong got 30 in this one. So, I mean, at least there's some pauses there as the leader of the Zorhan Bassong fan club here at Maple Footy. I'm glad to see Zorhan Bassong get in, because once again, another one of our players that has struggled with injuries this season. So it's just good to see him get in, get 30 minutes. Pretty substantial amount of time. Of course, not the result that KC would want, but if we're looking at this from a strictly Canadian standpoint, good. Very good to see Bassong back, and of course to see Afrifra getting the minutes as well. For Portland, though, Pantemis and Miller went the full 90. Very, very happy to see Kamal Miller get the start, go the full 90. He's had himself a strange start to the season. Started the first few games on the bench as an unused sub, then came in, looked pretty good, then got a red card, which I still denied the fact that it was a red card. Then after the suspension, didn't really get in, then got some minutes last weekend, and now, of course, starts here. So just happy for Kamal to be hopefully getting this season back on track for himself. He's one of those guys that will, I think, be eagerly awaiting that World Cup squad announcement, because he is one of those guys I think you can flip a coin on him right now of if he's going to be going or if he's not going to be going. He is, of course, my center back. He is, of course, my number 4. So I want Kamal to be there. But really just happy that he's gotten the time here. James Pantemis had a lot quieter of a weekend this weekend compared to last weekend. Last weekend, of course, making himself 13 saves in their loss to the Real Salt Lake. So I'm just glad that he grabs himself a clean sheet, had a pretty pedestrian day at the office, but that is not always a bad thing. And I just want to shout out the Portland Timbers fans that had the Save the Whitecaps sign along their support group section. Really, really cool that some teams are really getting behind this as well, because nobody wants to lose the Vancouver Whitecaps, even if they're from Portland, if they're from Seattle. Nobody wants to lose the Vancouver Whitecaps in Vancouver. Keep the Caps in Vancouver. And remember, I link down in the description the petition to hashtag Save the Caps. Go sign it. Make your voice heard. We cannot lose the Vancouver Whitecaps in Vancouver. We had Montreal facing off against Orlando, and Montreal grabs themselves a 2-0 win in this one. So big result for Montreal as they've now strung together a good couple results now over the last couple of weeks. So that is very good for Montreal. They have been a team that has been, of course, heavily scrutinized, but currently sitting only 2 points behind TFC in the tables in those playoff spots, and they have a game in hand. So Montreal has turn their season around a little bit, at least. As I've been saying, I do think that Montreal has the quality to at least be a playoff contender, not kind of in the same vein as TFC, not saying that they are going to go on and win it all, but you could at least see them maybe making a push to get into those playoff spots, and currently it looks like they could be doing just that with some of these results here. I thought it was a big performance from their midfield and defense especially. I still think that they look a totally different team with Piet in there as opposed to Piet not in there. I think that he is just crucial. I think he really helps just cover for the defense. He really helps link the play between the midfield and the attack as well. I just think that he's the type of midfielder that you want in there in those scenarios, and I thought he looked really good at the weekend. And as I said, I think that he just really helps them function. You may disagree, and that's fully okay. But yeah, he is one of those guys that I just think doesn't get the respect and recognition that I think he really, really deserves. So just happy that he's doing really well. Montreal, of course, then grabbed themselves 2 goals in second half stoppage time, grabbed one in the 94th and then in the 98th minute in this one. So it was definitely down to the wire. I thought Maxime Crepeau, he only had 2 saves to make outside the 2 goals that he conceded. So really only faced 4 shots on target. Save 2 wasn't his biggest performance. I thought he looked pretty decent for what he had to do. Of course, one of the goals was a penalty as well. So, that's a 50-50 at best. So just think Crepeau is looking still very good for Orlando. Orlando, sadly, are not looking great. Of course, the arrival of Antoine Griezmann come July-ish, I think could really help spur them on because I still think that he is just a quality player. So adding him to your team, I think could really, really help. But yeah, Maxime Crepeau, tough day at the office for him, but we've said that a lot on this podcast since him joining Orlando, but I don't think it's to do with Maxime Crepeau. I think that the team in front of him has kind of let him down a little bit because I think that he himself, if you look at Crepeau personally, I think he has had quite the good season. But the story here is, of course, CF Montreal. I think that they've really started to turn this season around. Now, whether they can build on this run of form here, time will tell, but I do still think that they are showing signs of life and optimism that were not there at the start of the season. So that is a huge plus if you're a Montreal supporter. If you're a Canadian soccer supporter, you just want to see the Canadian teams doing well, and Montreal at the moment are doing quite well. A team that is not doing quite well right now is TFC. Not a great week for them. We'll call a spade a spade. 4-2 loss to Inter Miami. And there was a lot of fan uproar, like the TFC fan uproar, that they were selling Miami kits, they were selling half scarves. It was overall just a strange look for TFC from a lot of fans' perspectives. There was a lot of guys on those like fan network interviews that were really ranting about this. So I fully understand why they probably felt that way. I don't like when the teams when Inter Miami comes into town, and a lot of teams just cater and bend to Messi, but that's a different, I think, discussion for a different day. I don't love it, but I also do understand you got to make your money. So who am I to say you shouldn't be doing anything, But regardless, looking at the game here, 4-0 at a point, and TFC just were not being able to keep up with Inter Miami. Now, I will caveat this by saying TFC are facing a ton of injuries at the moment. Some huge players are out for them right now. You look, Sargent, Mihailovic, Richie Larea, and a plethora of other guys. They have like 10 first-teamers out at the moment. Not good. That is always going to be hard to cope with. But on the other hand, you do still have to go out there and you do still have to put up a performance. And they just really, I thought, lacked that until about the last 10 minutes of the game, where then they all of a sudden woke up. Emilio gets 2 goals in the space of like 2 minutes to potentially tease a comeback. I think TFC were robbed of a stonewall penalty at the end as well. Would that have changed anything? I don't know. Probably not. There wasn't a whole ton of time left when that potential penalty incident did take place. But hey, you never know. Would have been an insane comeback if it did happen. But of course, it doesn't. TFC now, with all the injuries, with these poor results, are slipping down those playoff spots. I still maintain, as I will until it is mathematically proven so or mathematically disproven, TFC will be in the playoffs this season. I genuinely believe that in my heart of hearts. But of course, these injuries are really not helping them. But I think after the World Cup, once they have some of these guys back, hoping that they have some of these guys back at least, that maybe then you can really see them turning the tides here. Last Canadian team in the MLS are the Vancouver Whitecaps here. They went 1-1 against the Earthquakes in a top-of-the-table clash. Berhalter pulls through heavy here. I thought he had himself a great performance, which, I mean, he usually does. He had himself a great performance, so grabs the goal for the Caps to save this one. Some injury concerns, though, as Muller is now out on the injury reserved list. Gauld is still out. Priso, Adekubi, some big crucial players for Vancouver Whitecaps are out at the moment. They are handling their injuries quite well. I think they have quite good depth as well. Adekubi's out. You have a guy like Tate Johnson that can come in. Muller, you're not going to be able to replace Muller's quality, but they do still have pieces around a Thomas Muller that can really come in and fill in, like a Badwell can fill in. Of course, Gauld is out at the moment, but you bring in Asabi. You have Brian White, who's doing Brian White things. And of course, you have a great midfield engine like Sebastian Berhalter. So they're really handling right now, knock on wood, injuries well. And the rumors last week were that Priso, Adekubi, and Gauld were all back in different stages of training, so hopefully that is good things and good signs to come, as maybe they will be on the road to getting back into the team. I didn't see any reports of how serious the Muller injury was. I just saw that he was listed as an injury, so hoping that it's nothing serious for him either. But this was a big result for the Whitecaps. Still, as I said last week, credit to the Whitecaps for being able to push all that outside noise to the side and being able to just laser focus on the league at the moment. That just kind of, I think, shows the level of quality and maturity that these players in this team has. So really good there. And remember, #save the Caps. Moving to Europe now. The English Championship started their playoffs, and of course we have some Canadian representatives in that. The Championship playoffs for a lot of people are like the best thing to watch in football, and I can't say I disagree. They're always so much fun, and I will try to watch them every year when I can. And this year, of course, have a vested interest, since we have a couple of Canadian boys in there. But both games, actually, Middlesbrough and Southampton, and then Millwall and Hull, both ended 0-0. Millwall Hull, I wouldn't say it was a lackluster game, but definitely a very cagey affair. Neither team wanted to make those mistakes, and you could tell with Middlesbrough and Southampton, it was just nobody could score on the day. I felt like it was a pretty good game. Liam Millar and Kyle Larin both started in their respective matches as well. For Liam Millar and Hull, as of recording, they play tonight on Monday. So by the time this podcast goes up, we will know if Hull are going to Wembley or if their season is done. But I, of course, can't report on the future. So hopefully this doesn't age poorly, but hopefully Hull wins this one. They go through. If they don't, then Sadly, they don't. But regardless, I do think that Hall and Liam Miller have still had a season to be proud of, regardless of what the result is tonight. But of course, you want to be playing at Wembley. For Larin and Southampton in their match against Middlesbrough, you do have that plays on Tuesday. So this goes up on Tuesday, so by the time this goes up, it will be tonight that they play, and we will know if Kyle Larin is on his way to Wembley for the second time this season. Hopefully, we do get our Canadian boys in there, but we will have to wait and see. Elsewhere in Spain, Tejan Buchanan and Tani Oluwaseyi start in a 1-1 draw versus Mallorca. Both men, I thought, had quiet days but covered themselves a lot of ground, just failed to really impose themselves on the match. I thought Tage ran the wings really well. He just wasn't getting on the ball in really critical areas that you'd want a player of his quality to get on the ball in, and thus kind of resulting in a bit of a quieter afternoon. And Tani Oluwaseyi was pressing a lot, but just once again wasn't receiving the ball in really clinical areas for him to be able to do anything with said ball. But regardless, Villarreal, of course, do still have a lot to look forward to. They have officially clinched the UCL spot for next season. That happened last week, so really good for them. Now it's just kind of a matter of just seeing out the remaining few games of the season and keeping your guys healthy heading into the World Cup and prepping for next season, really. So really good for Villarreal. I think they've had themselves a great season. In Belgium, Luc de Fougerolles went 60 minutes in a 2-1 loss for Dender, a result that makes it very tough for them to secure safety for next season. Dender have not had themselves a great season. We'll be honest here. They just haven't. Luc de Fougerolles, of course, has played a lot for them, which is good. This move was to get him a lot of first team minutes, a lot of playing time, and it has done that, which I think is good. He's going to end up going back to Fulham come the end of this loan spell. It wouldn't shock me if he gets sent out on loan again, maybe this time to a team in England potentially. Maybe Fulham will want to keep it in England, let him develop in the English game a little bit at the pro level, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Dender, sadly, not a great day out for them. Nico Sigur played 85 minutes in the Croatian League in a 2-1 loss versus Dinamo Zagreb. He had himself a pretty good game, but of course, Hadžić will be very disappointed to not grab a result here because, you always want to win. But I thought Seager looked very good. He looked very good in the midfield. Still a spot that I'd like to see him play for Canada during some point in his international career would be really nice. But yeah, it would be really nice to see him kind of play there because you can see the quality that he has in these spots. I mean, he had a very good match over the weekend. So hopefully we can kind of see him integrate into our midfield at the international level. Ishmael Kone in Italy with Sassuolo came off the bench for the final 27 minutes in a 2-1 loss versus Torino. Sassuolo don't really have a whole ton to play for. Security has been secured. The Serie A place has been secured for next season, so really good for them. They, of course, were a team that came from Serie B last season, so for them to be able to stay in Serie A going into next season is a huge plus. It's exactly what you want as a newly promoted side in any league, is to stay up, and they have done just that. So this loss, while it does suck because you always want to win, it really doesn't hinder anything that they were going to do for the remainder of this season. They're far off of the European places, but far off the relegation spots. So really just a matter of seeing out your results, playing the last few games, and hoping to pick up some wins. But if you don't, it's not really the end of the world, but of course you do still always want to win. But yeah, Sassuolo are in a good spot at the moment. Elsewhere, Jonathan David's Juventus are in a very good spot at the moment as they beat Lecce 1-0. David played only the final 7 minutes here, but they sit in third at the moment, in control of their own destiny for top four. Not many points separate. It was like third, fourth, fifth, and I think sixth in the table. Like there's like 1 or 2 points separating all those teams. So it's definitely not an ideal spot to be in, but when you're in control of your own fate, as Juventus are here, that is an ideal scenario to be in. So yes, it could be better. They could be 5 points up, but being in control of your fate isn't a terrible thing. Just go out there, get your results that you need, get the big moments, get the big goals, get the big wins, and you'll be playing Champions League next season. So we will wait and see how that plays out for Jonathan David and Juventus. Of course, very disappointing to not see Jonathan David play a whole ton in this one, but of course, grabs that final 7. hoping that he can grab some more minutes heading into the World Cup. This season for me, for Jonathan David, is a bit of a healthy scratch, if you will. We'll kind of just chalk it up to first season and hope that next season he can go out there, show what he can do, because we saw glimpses of it during this season with Juventus. So hoping that he can go into next season, maybe have a really good World Cup, build on that going into next season. Hope that he can really do wonders at Juventus. Wrapping this one up here, final result. Alistair Johnston's Celtic beat Rangers in the big derby, 3-1. Alistair Johnston, we will say it, probably should have been sent off for a studs-up tackle, but when it's Celtic Rangers, you will see tackles like this. They are two of the biggest rivals in just football in general. They're one of those games where you want to watch it because you know it's going to be an intense game. You know it's going to be a really good game. You know it's going to be a really back and forth game. And it didn't disappoint. It was a really good game. So shout out to Alistair Johnston for avoiding a red card, and good on Celtic for grabbing the victory in this one, getting the bragging rights here. And yeah, Alistair Johnston, he went the full 90 as well, which is really good. Of course, he's another one. Shocker, who's coming back from an injury. So very good to see him get the full 90. I thought outside of that tackle, he looked pretty good. So that's exactly what you want coming off of an injury and heading into the World Cup. Just play as much as you can in these final few games. Stay healthy, get into that good form. And I mean, his quality is no doubt. We know how good Alistair Johnston is. We just got to make sure he is healthy come the World Cup. So good on him for grabbing the full 90 in this one. But that does bring us to an end of this episode of Maple Footy. I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, maybe stick around. We can watch a few other podcasts as they drop over the next couple of weeks. Very exciting times here at Maple Footy as, of course, the World Cup's ramping up. We got some interviews coming up, and just, it's going to be a fun summer, I think, as I keep saying. So follow along, hit the subscribe on whichever platform you're listening on or watching on. Follow us on socials at Maple Footy Pod everywhere. I think it's going to be a really, really good summer. So definitely going to want to stick around, check it all out. And thank you so much for listening. If you have this far, I do sincerely appreciate it. And until next time, cheers, everyone. And say we have a very special guest on. He's been a Forge fan favorite during his time with the club, and this past December, he and Forge dropped the bombshell that he'd be stepping out of retirement and back into the Orange. He's a 3-time CPL champ and even picked up a USL title along the way. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor to welcome Daniel Crutzen to the podcast. So Daniel, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates. Remember to support Canadian football, be kind, and until next time, live, laugh, little.